Welcome everyone to today's presentation in support of White Ribbon Australia. I'm Claire, I'm a counsellor at Access Wellbeing Service.
Hi everybody, my name is Anil, I'm a counsellor at Centacare.
We're just going to head over to the PowerPoint and get started. Okay. So I guess we do have a few kind of facts and stats that are really helpful. You might be a little surprised by the number of them. On average, one woman a week is killed by their current or former partner. That's an extraordinary amount.
It is.
And this is from the Australian Bureau of Statistics as well.
Mm.
1 in 4 women experience emotional abuse by a current or former partner since the age of 15. So this starts really young. 1 in 5 women have experienced sexual violence since the age of 15.
That's 20%, Claire.
Yeah, it's huge. And 85% of Australian women have been sexually harassed, objectified as being female and a thing to be used.
I remember talking to a colleague and she believes that this might be even higher, just because of what could be perhaps seen as just male behaviour or normalised or whatever, could stop women from actually seeing it as sexual harassment or other people seeing it as sexual harassment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to note that these are only the information that's been reported.
That's right, exactly.
There'd be a whole heap of information not reported. So I always err on the side of believing that it's perhaps a little higher than what we have here, which is really sad. Also, police respond to an average of 657 domestic violence matters every day, 1 every 2 minutes.
Wow.
Family violence against women is the biggest reason women and children are homeless. And, again, it comes back to it's difficult to leave because leaving the perpetrator means leaving everything.
That's right. And often they've controlled you to a point where, that's right, you really don't have much resources. They've sort of isolated you from your support, your resources and everything.
Yeah, controlled your finances.
Exactly. Yeah.
Haven't been able to work, perhaps.
That's right.
Almost 40% of women continue to experience violence from their partner whilst temporarily separated. So this is what I was talking about, that separation moment, leaving the violent relationship is very dangerous because it continues on and it can perhaps change and look different.
It is a high-risk time, yes.
1 in 6 women have experienced stalking since the age of 15. So never knowing who's around the corner. And now that we have, I guess, more electronics, mobile phones, and there's quite a number of ways that people can keep track of each other, isn't there? So I'll hand over to you, Neil, to talk a little bit more about understanding these statistics in this social context.
Great. So the stats are quite alarming. 95% of all victims of violence, whether women or men, experience violence from a male perpetrator. So whether you're a female victim or survivor of violence or a male survivor of violence, it's 95% chance that the perpetrator is male. 1 in 5 of all Australians think men should take control in a relationship and be the head of the household. I was actually quite surprised by this.
Again, 20%,
yeah. 1 in 4 Australians think men make better political leaders. Again, quite surprising, given that, we're in 2021 and there's still such high numbers of people who think and believe this stuff. Yeah.
So when we think about the social context, we're talking about what are the beliefs within society that might motivate people to behave in a certain way. And if we believe that, men should have the right and responsibility to be in control, then it's really difficult to argue that that's actually a dangerous thing, that because of someone's gender, that they have that right.
That's right. You can see it being used as an excuse. Right? Yeah. Okay, so now we'll move on to the gendered drivers of violence. So why is it that males are more likely perhaps to perpetrate violence against women? So one of the reasons could be condoning of violence against women. This is almost like normalizing it, like making it okay or encouraging it even. encourage anybody to look at old school adverts from the 70s, 60s, and stuff like that. And you'll actually see some of the stuff in advertising from the 60s and stuff like that.
And we kind of hope that these sorts of messages will have changed by now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do see that they're still there.
Yeah, definitely.
Not as prominently, perhaps.
No, there's been improvements, but we still have a long, long way to go. Yeah, yeah. Another reason could be men's control of decision making and limits to women's independence in public and private life. Rigid gendered roles and stereotype constructions of masculinity and femininity. So this is what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, and what the different roles are. So for example, some unhelpful beliefs could be around women are just housewives and women are just people who are there for men's sexual pleasure or things like this. These are the kind of rigid gendered stereotypes, roles and stuff that we're talking about. Or even on the other hand, masculinity. So to be a man, you have to control your woman, or, this really unhelpful.
Be the provider.
Yeah.
Not of kind of emotional support. The women, the gendered roles is that woman is the caretaker and the man is the provider. And that's a lot of responsibility on men, I think, to feel like they might need to do that. Where there's equality and there's no gendering of roles, it's equal responsibility to be emotionally caring for our family and also financially providing, or providing in other ways, might really break down these barriers to create non-gendered roles.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely. And then another reason could be that male peer relationships emphasize aggression I'll start that one again. So male peer relations that emphasize aggression and disrespect towards women. So this is, again, normalizing, encouraging everything within the context of a social group of men, right? I've actually seen it a lot, unfortunately, in certain groups of men. And there's no particular subset of men that I've seen it in, but I have seen it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I go to the gym and, quite cautious of the kind of the groups of men gathering around, and I can see a lot of the women in the gym feeling a little intimidated by that. And I don't know what the men were talking about or thinking, but because it happens, that there's sort of, when there are groups of men, those peer relationships, it can be, a bit worrying for women.
Definitely, very much so, yeah.
So if we just go back to those reinforcing factors. So there are other reinforcing factors within the context of gendered drivers. The condoning of violence in general is always bad, as we said in the beginning, but also, speaking about those women at the gym who might feel intimidated, whilst they might not be doing anything intimidating, they've had experience of violence, either in their family of origin, so they're from their father, or within their school, which makes them more fearful of that because they've experienced it and been exposed to it from a young age.
Experience of and exposure to violence could also be a driver of gendered violence. Weakening of pro-social behaviours, especially harmful use of alcohol. So obviously this is the antisocial behaviours that can be prevalent within men and women. Socioeconomic inequality and discrimination. Backlash factors, increases in violence when male dominance, power or status is challenged.
Again, it comes back to that sort of, it's men's responsibility to be the man, the boss, to be in control all the time. And that's a lot of responsibility. So when that is questioned, then it might feel, really concerning for the man. And they kind of push back to say, actually, no, I can be that person you expect of me. So we need to change our expectations around men's roles as much as women's, in order to ensure women and children feel safe.
Very good point, Claire. Yeah. So let's talk about the effect of family violence on children. think this is quite an important thing to reflect on because sometimes people can think of domestic violence between intimate partners. Often people think that I work with perpetrators, and a lot of perpetrators say, oh, well, I've never been violent to my child. And so they kind of absolutely miss the point of just witnessing and being in that environment of violence has very harmful impact on children.
It can be very traumatizing.
Very, very traumatizing, and a lot of research backing that. Yeah. In fact, one of the ones is that they done a research on children who've had divorced parents, and they found that it wasn't actually the divorce that was harmful for them, or that was most harmful for them. What really caused psychological and emotional harm was the fact that when there was two parents in conflict, that's when the kids were most affected. So children of mothers experiencing family violence have higher rates of social and emotional problems than other children. And already this could be quite traumatizing for a child, because obviously if your mother's not doing so well emotionally and socially, then it's very hard for you to feel comfortable and feel secure within that relationship. 1 in 4 young people think it's pretty normal for guys to pressure girls into sex. Again, this one was quite shocking to me. That's quite a high number. Yeah. 1 in 3 young people don't think controlling someone is a form of violence. And 1 in 4 young people don't think it's serious when guys insult or verbally harass girls in the streets.
So if we just go back, when we're talking about sexual activity, women and boys and girls are exposed to pornography at quite a young age, where women are objects to be used, and there's a lot of, pressure on the female within pornography to play that role where men are dominant and in control.
That's right.
So maybe that's why the statistics read that way.
Very good point there. Very good point.
So how do we address those actions against violence to women? We can be part of this solution. And it's really essential that we address the gender drivers, what we talked about. So really challenging those and the condoning of violence against women by being able to stand up and say, that's not okay. I'm going to be standing up for the rights of women and children. To promote women's independence and decision-making in public life and in relationships. So I guess talking with your friends and asking them, how do you guys make decisions together? And if the answer is, well, we don't, he makes all the decisions, and wonder about their safety. Really foster personal identity, so keeping our sense of self and challenging those gender stereotypes. Just because you're female doesn't mean that you can't mow the lawn or be the primary provider. And for the dad or the other parent to be the primary parent. To strengthen positive and equal and respectful relationships between young women, men, girls and boys. So from a very young age, really addressing anything that might go against the safety of women and children.
Yeah.
Promote and normalise gender equality in public and private life as well.
Yeah, I really like the point you made, Claire, about having conversations. Right? I think that's really important. I really like that idea for women to start having conversations with their friends and asking them about decision making and things like that. I think that's a really good point you made. Yeah.
But also for men to have those conversations as well with each other about how, for your friend to go up to you and say, how do you guys make decisions in your relationship, really normalises the fact that this is a collaborative relationship. Right. It's not one person being the leader and the other person being the follower.
Another good point, yeah. And even for men to have conversations amongst their peer groups around, how decisions get made and possibly even pull up each other on what could be abusive.
So really challenging the normalisation of violence as an expression of masculinity and male dominance. That being big and strong doesn't mean that doesn't make you a man. prevent exposure of violence and support those affected to reduce the consequence. The safer we can make the experience of girls and boys and protect them from violence, the more we're going to be able to break this cycle. We can reduce the backlash by engaging men and boys in gender equality, building relationships, skills, and those social connections, just like we were talking about before. Like, let's talk about this. We're going to promote also a broader social equality and address the structural discrimination and disadvantage. So we've got to think within our own relationships, within our community, and then within the broader community. When it comes to relationships, we all can be a part of the solution. So I guess, in order to do that, to break this cycle of violence or to lessen the impact of harm, it just really boils down to talking about it and also promoting respect.
That's right.
So we can all influence another's attitude about disrespect to women. When we see it in action, we tend not to get involved. And silence promotes violence. We need to be the change. We need to have the conversation and be informed and be respectful towards women always. How do you think, Anil, why do you think we don't have this conversation sometimes when we see it out there?
I think there's quite a number of reasons. One being the belief that, it's none of my business, that it's just sort of the couple's business. And I remember there being a huge, I think, a government-backed campaign actually around domestic violence being everybody's business. And I'm in very much agreement with that. But also, if we've grown up in a violent environment, we might just think, well, that's just the relationship, that's just how things work. And there could also be risk factors. We might be scared to get involved. And I think in that case, that's quite fair enough. We would never want anyone to put themselves at risk. In that case, we still can do something about it. We can still call the authorities, right? And have them involved. So, yeah.
Yeah, and even those kind of small, what we might consider small incidences of discrimination or harassment, to be able to just say, look, you might want to rethink what you just said there, or you need to apologise or take responsibility for the way that you're talking to, that woman or that girl. But I guess the perpetrator is being quite intimidating anyway, and I know as a woman, I'd feel intimidated and unwilling to stand up to a man for fear of being at risk as well. So I understand that kind of, not wanting to put yourself in danger, and we'd never ask someone to do that. But you're also not alone. There are authorities everywhere. That's
exactly right. Yeah, we still can do something about it.
Yeah. But I think your point, Anil, around, it's been normalised, like maybe, this is normal. This is just people having a fight. They'll sort it out.
That's right. Yeah, and I think there's definitely a lot of that when it comes to emotional abuse. There's a lot of misconceptions that that's just what happens in a relationship, when really it's not. It's not does not occur in a healthy relationship.
No, that's right. That's not a sign of a healthy relationship.
No.
That's a sign of a relationship where there's domestic violence.
Exactly. Yeah.